My Lords, in rising to speak to the Armed Forces Bill, I can only contextualise our debate, as so many other noble lords have, with the dreadful events in Afghanistan, the continuing desperate efforts of people who have supported and served with our armed forces to escape the country, where their lives remain at this moment in severe danger. I acknowledge the impacts, so powerfully outlined by the noble Lady Baroness Brinton, of the events on so many who have been serving there recently and who have served there previously. And I can share the concerns that many noble lords have expressed about the inadequate funding and level of services for veterans and current serving people, particularly mental health services. Now, many noble lords have expressed concerns that I share about the failure of the government to adopt the recommendation of Judge Lyons on the treatment of murder, manslaughter and rape charges, particularly well-highlighted concerns about the management of rape and sexual assault cases. I don't feel that I have a great deal to add on that issue. I think the view of the House is already very clear. I think the view of the House about application of the covenant, statutory application of the military covenant to local government but not to central government is also an area in which the view of the House is very clear. I also want to simply commend the Right Reverend Prelate, the Bishop of St Albans, not currently in his place, in highlighting the issue of problem gambling, and to ask the government, as the Prelate did, whether at least plans an examination of this issue. To be fair, I also want to commend the government on the measure in the bill to right previous wrongs against LGBTIQA+ service people. I want to mostly devote my speech, however, to raising two issues that I don't believe other noble lords have raised. The first is child soldiers. It's estimated today that the number in the world range from 250 to 300,000. The United Nations has an International Day against the use of child soldiers, known as Red Hand Day. Yet the UK is remarkably silent in international venues on this issue when we're outspoken on so many other related issues. Because we know why. We have child soldiers. This bill is a lost opportunity to end the practice of recruiting children to the UK's armed forces, as a coalition of 20 human rights organisations called for earlier this year. Now, I suspect that many Britons would be surprised to know that 1 in 5 new military recruits is under the age of 18, a ratio that rises to 1 in 4 in the Army, which recruits more 16-year-olds than any other age, particularly into infantry roles. Now, this is an argument that's been rehearsed over many years, but we are actually now in a very different situation, given that continuation of education for 16 and 17-year-olds is now standard, even among the most disadvantaged groups, where 4 in 5 continue in education. Now, nearly 1 in 3 underage recruits leave the Army or are dismissed. They've left their education early to join up, unlike their peers, and then they're immediately out of a job and not in education. So I have a question for the noble lady, the Minister. Are they covered by the military covenant? And what special provision is the government making for their obviously very high needs? And has the government any plans for a reconsideration of the recruitment of child soldiers? Now, I note the disturbing figures obtained by the SNP MP Carol Monaghan that girls under 18 made at least 16 formal complaints of sexual assault to the military police in the last 6 years, equivalent to 1 in every 75 girls in the military. Which brings me to the second main issue that I want to address. Women are about 10% of our full-time military, more than 15,000 in number, a significant minority serving in virtually all roles and functions, but still very much a minority, bringing in their different experiences from a discriminatory society, subjected to particular issues in service life and afterwards. I commend the work of Salute Her in highlighting this issue and the need for specialist support services, with women veterans having experienced significantly higher rates of adverse childhood experiences than civilians, with 38% of women veterans reporting military sexual trauma, and 33% of women veterans experiencing intimate partner violence, compared to 24% of non-veteran women. Now, since we're addressing the place of our military, I also must raise one broader issue, given the particular timing of this debate: the role of our armed forces being closely interrelated to our arms industry. For indeed, we're speaking now as we're about to see arms fairs in the UK, not very far from this place. Our military is working with our arms industry to pump weapons out into a world that's already awash with them. Now, I, this weekend, will be joining many on the streets to protest and call for an end to such promotion of a dangerous industry that threatens all of our security. And I think there's one final question. I suspect the Mobile Lady Minister won't have this in her briefing, but I hope she might consider responding to me afterwards in writing. That industry put, or at least export licences were allowed for £150 million worth of weapons into Afghanistan since 2008. Can the Noble Lady, the Minister, tell me how many of those weapons are now in the hands of the Taliban, are now usably in the hands of the Taliban? Thank you.
My Lord.